Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I think that's yes. I have very limited feedback on the Zoom call, but here I am calling in from the Bay Area where it's 3:40 a.m. Super honored to be here. I wish I could be here with all of y'all in person. And super excited to talk about Base, where we're going, and how this fits into the Superchain. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put my screen up right now so I can have a deck that I'm walking through. Let me just confirm. It looks like that's now up on the screen and folks can see me. So hey everyone, I'm Jesse, the creator of Base. I've been working on that for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I led all of the teams at Coinbase building our consumer products. If you want to get in touch with me, you can scan that QR code right there. That hits me up on on-chain messaging with XMTP. You can do that through Coinbase Wallet or Lens or Converse or any of these other clients. I'm pretty available there. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Base. What is on-chain? How do we think about decentralization? And how do we think about building the superchain? Which is this incredible kind of coming together of different infrastructure to build a unified, consistent experience for customers. So before I get into kind of the specifics around Base, I want to quickly talk about on-chain. This is a word that a lot of y'all have probably heard. You've seen it on the internet. And the way we think about on-chain is that we believe it's going to replace online as the most powerful developer platform in history. And I think the easiest mental model for this is before the internet, we were all offline. And there wasn't that much we could do from a writing and owning perspective. All we could really do was consume information. And that meant that large centralized players, whether it was the TV stations or the newspapers, we were really serving as gatekeepers of who could create. And then the internet came around. And it's been this incredible last 20 years where the world was completely transformed because for the first time, anyone, anywhere could contribute to what was going on. They could share their stories, they could post their content, and anyone, anywhere else in the world would be able to consume it. You have Facebook, Twitter, Google. We have this live stream where I'm able to connect with all of y'all, share what I'm thinking, share what I'm seeing from the other side of the world. And that's been incredibly transformative. But one of the big challenges with the internet era is that even though we could read and write, we still weren't actually owning the information that we brought into the world. We weren't owning the creativity that we brought into the world. And so when we were posting our videos on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, we were giving those away. We were putting those into the hands of large corporations that have then been monetizing them and really not returning that value back to the end people who are creating it. And we believe we're at the next era, the on-chain era, where for the first time, anyone, anywhere can read, write, and own everything they're putting into the internet. And this is enabling new use cases from new financial systems with USDC and Uniswap and Aave to new creative systems with Zora and NFTs and creativity coming on-chain. I mean, we believe that like the internet transformed the world for the last 20 years, on-chain and crypto is going to transform the world and upgrade all of our systems over the next 20 years. And Coinbase has been building for this on-chain economy for the last decade. Hundreds of countries, hundreds of billions of assets, almost hundreds of billions of dollars in trading volume. And so as we've been thinking about Base, we've been thinking about how do we build the next generation of on-chain products. And Base is a layer 2, an Ethereum layer 2, that's going to enable that next generation of on-chain products. And the reason why we are kind of investing in this is that what we're seeing is that over the last 5 years, we've seen an incredible amount of growth in layer 2 activity, in on-chain activity, and we want to help bring the next million builders, the next billion users on-chain. And so just to kind of share a little data on that, this is the number of on-chain users. You see that it's kind of going up and to the right. This is the number of on-chain developers. See that's also going up and to the right. And here's some on-chain use cases that we've seen just crop up in the last 6 months. We've seen collecting start to come on-chain. We've seen advocacy start to come on-chain, restaurant loyalty, social media, messaging, gaming. Pretty much every single thing that we've done on the internet is starting to shift onto this new platform. But I think our observations were still really far from everyone being on-chain. Today, there's less than 10 million people on chain. Many of y'all are in the room today. And over the next decade, we think that we want to bring 8 billion people on chain. And so that's the vision. It's building Base to bring the next million developers, the next billion users on chain. But I think one of the questions that we've gotten pretty frequently is why decentralize? Base was launched out of a centralized Coinbase. This is the first for a large US-based public company. We did not have to build this in a decentralized way. In fact, as you look at some of our counterparts, they've kind of opted to say, hey, we're going to build permissioned block space. Where it's kind of controlled by a single business, or it's controlled by kind of a small number of businesses, and we do a bunch of permissioned activity on it. At Coinbase, we said, okay, let's rethink that. Let's think about how we can contribute to building this decentralized ecosystem that's much bigger than us. And the reason why we wanted to do that is because we believe that decentralization is what's going to enable an open global on-chain economy. So let me just quickly talk through that. Decentralization enables an open global on-chain economy. An open global on-chain economy improves economic freedom. This is things like property rights, stable currency, free trade, equal access to services. And improved economic freedom makes the world a better place. And so as we thought about, okay, how do we want to build Base? I think the question was kind of answered for us from our mission. If we want to improve economic freedom globally, then we have to build in a decentralized way. And we think that that's going to drive better outcomes for everyone everywhere in the world. So this is still maturing. As we look at the L2 ecosystem, we're seeing that a lot of L2s are still in what we call stage 0, where there's training wheels, and some are starting to progress to stage 1, where there's less training wheels. And our goal over the next year is to move from stage 0 to stage 2 as quickly as possible, so we can ensure that Base remains open and decentralized, which enables us to build this open global on-chain economy, which enables us to improve economic freedom everywhere. And so that's Base. That's why decentralization. Now I want to quickly turn it towards why are we building towards this superchain vision. And so the first thing to define is that we believe in a superchain, which is a collective body of interoperable chains that are working together to scale Ethereum. And I think the big takeaway here is that no single chain, no single piece of infrastructure is going to be sufficient to grow this kind of emerging infrastructure that we have to billions of people. Instead, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to work together to make things interoperate, make things connect, so that we can have many instances of chains, many instances of block space, which are all scaling this kind of collective whole together and bringing more and more users on chain. And so as we've thought about kind of building towards the superchain, building towards decentralization, we really have 3 ways that we're doing that. The first is that we're investing in this technically. The second is that we are participating in this open neutrality framework, which we see as kind of critical for maintaining decentralization and contributing to superchain. And then the third is that we are funding the underlying public goods, which makes the superchain possible. And so let me just walk through each of these with a little bit more detail. So first, the technical investments in decentralization. We've been working for the last year to strengthen the underlying technology stack that powers Base. There's a number of different ways we've been doing this, working on op-geth and op-ref to get fault proofs live, scalability, reliability, working on the Security Council, which is going to ultimately secure not just Base, but all of the chains that are operating in the superchain, and also building monitoring software, things like Pessimism, which is a security stack that's open source that allows anyone to monitor OP stack chains like Base and make sure that the superchain is secure. And so we believe that contributing from a technical perspective as Base, as Coinbase, to make sure that this technology works really, really well, not just for Base, but for anyone who's participating in the superchain, is paramount to making sure that this thing works in a collective way. And like I said earlier, our goal with these technical contributions is to progress Base and other OP stack chains from a stage 0 to a stage 1 rollup early next year. And then in late next year, early 2025, progress from a stage 1 rollup to a stage 2 rollup. And that's going to enable us to keep that open, permissionless, decentralized characteristic of the Base block space, which enables us to build that open global economy. So that's the technical contributions. The second big thing that we're doing as we think about building a superchain is participating in an open neutrality framework. And the reason why we've kind of focused on this commitment is that we are committed to making it so that Base shares the open permissionless properties of Ethereum and OP mainnet. So if you're a developer and you're building on Ethereum, and you decide, hey, I want to come deploy on Base or I want to come deploy on OP mainnet, you can expect that not only will the technical characteristics of that be the same, but the neutrality characteristics of it will be the same as well. And that means that the Base block space will be open to everyone, everywhere. You'll be able to build applications in whatever way you want. And you're going to know that you're going to be protected from a neutrality perspective to kind of have that freedom to experiment, to build, to create. And so to enable that neutrality and enable that characteristic of Base block space, we've committed to the law of chains, which is this open neutrality framework that basically ensures that everything we're doing on Base remains consistent from a neutrality perspective with Ethereum, and that there's no censorship, there's no kind of favoritism that would bias one product, bias one builder on Base, or lock people out based on kind of where they are in the world. And so the things that enable us to kind of do that are things like ensuring that state transitions and block space across Base is consistent, ensuring that Base is secure, available, has a high level of uptime, and I think importantly that we're working together with other chains to do universal kind of governance approved upgrades that enable us to keep this consistency across Base, across OP mainnet, across other networks like Zora Network, and PGN, and all of the people who are kind of building towards this collective superchain vision. And not only have we kind of committed to this law of chains from a kind of commitment perspective, where we said, hey, we're doing this, we've also committed to it from a code perspective. And so as we've built Base from a kind of smart contract perspective and a challenging perspective, which is a really important part of the kind of proving system, we've basically started to decentralize, where as we were working towards this broader Security Council, the first step was setting up the network such that optimism could serve as a counterbalance to ensure that our commitment to the law of chains was upheld. And so that was this really, really important decentralization step that allows us to deliver on our promise and make it so you don't need to trust a single entity. You don't need to trust Coinbase that we're going to keep this open law of chains. And you can trust the open, decentralized on-chain collective of optimism, who is increasingly upholding this commitment across a number of different chains. And so making sure that it wasn't just words, but instead it was actions was super, super important to us. So that's the second thing, the law of chains commitment to ensure that Base remains neutral. And then the final way we're doing this is that we are investing in funding the underlying infrastructure that makes this happen. And so what that means is that we're taking a portion of the revenue that is generated from sequencer fees on Base, and we're contributing those back to funding public goods on Base. And so there's two big ways we're doing that. One is we're participating in retroactive public goods funding through the Optimism Collective. So if you build on Base, you are eligible for retroactive public goods funding. We're in the middle of distributing 40 million OP tokens The deadline for our funding closed on October 23rd, and we're about to finish all of the kind of governance process that's going to allocate that. And what we've seen is that there were hundreds of projects that built on Base and applied through this process. And the vast majority of those are going to end up getting kind of funding that is proportional to their impact on the network. And where that funding comes from is the Base contribution to the OP collective through our sequencer revenue. And so that's a really, really important kind of flywheel that we've started, where as more transactions happen on Base, there's more funding for the public goods that are built on Base, which can go back into the hands of builders. And so if you are building on Base or you're considering building on Base, highly recommend you apply to retroactive public goods funding. It's happening every 6 months, so the next cycle will be in the first half of next year. And you can know that your contributions to the network will be evaluated and rewarded retroactively from this kind of pool of public goods funding that we're building as more and more chains join the Superchain. So that's the first way we're funding public goods. The second big way we're funding public goods is we have been doing a number of rapid experimentation around how do we get resources into the hands of builders faster. And so the second prototype of this is builder grants. This is fast grants that we're generally doing in 1 to 2 weeks. Small, so 1 to 5 ETH, really focused on folks who are making contributions to the ecosystem and are building cool things on chain. And so if you want to kind of get a builder grant, you can go to base.org, go into the ecosystem, drop down and click the grants thing. And that'll be the information about how you apply. But we're really excited to take the revenue from Base and put that back into the hands of builders who are creating awesome products on chain. So those were the 3 ways we're contributing to make the Superchain happen. The first is technical contributions. The second is committing to this open law of chains. That's a neutrality framework. And then the third is funding the underlying public goods and funding that underlying infrastructure by putting resources back into the hands of builders like y'all to make it all happen. And so the last thought that I have is that we're at the very beginning of what's going to be a transformative journey over the next decade. We've seen the amount of activity on layer 2s grow from basically 0 2 years ago to 5x Ethereum today. And we expect that to grow even more dramatically, even more exponentially over the next decade. And so the time is now. On-chain is the future. Y'all are the builders who are making it happen. Let's go build the future. Thank you so much for having me from the other side of the world. I can't hear or even see the audience right now, but I hope you enjoyed listening to this overview of what is Base, why are we building Base in a decentralized way, what's the Superchain, and how are we contributing to make that happen. And I hope you have an awesome rest of the conference and find a lot of other cool people who are building cool stuff and come and do it on chain. So if you're looking to build on Base, you can learn more at base.org. Again, you can DM me on Telegram, where you can actually, let me see, just put this up, or you can DM me on chain with Coinbase Wallet or XMTP or Converse. I'd love to support any of you who are building on chain. Would love to support anyone who's interested in building on Base. So thanks everyone for having me. Super awesome to be here.